Welcome everyone. It's quite cool to see so many people joining in. It's the first science chat since we had the students for Riverscamp a while ago. Jess is recording it from now on, so in case you don't like your face to be on the recording, maybe just get your screen shut. But we would like to see your face actually, so it's quite nice if people keep showing themselves a little bit. Cool, yeah, so welcome. We're quite excited about today's science chat as it's really diving into a case study in Albania that's kind of been the lead for this whole Save the Blue Heart campaign. And it's been the main focus, and there's some really exciting news that came out lately. So we have Conny today, who's gonna talk about it, and she's one of the main minds behind Riverwatch and been leading the Save the Blue Heart campaign. So yeah, I'm actually gonna give the word to you quite soon. Just really quick, like she'll probably be talking 25, maybe 30 minutes. And a bit of a presentation. Feel free to already ask some questions in the chat or keep them for later, as we'll be having a bit of a discussion afterwards. And yeah, very moment, I just want to quickly say, like, we had the student for Riverwatch not so long ago. I see some students joining in here as well. I want to mention that at this moment we're thinking of bringing together some ideas that came together during a workshop. And we want to actually start working on them in the coming time over winter, so that in springtime we can start piloting them. So in case you want to join a group or you have an idea also for river protection or something, you might want to have, for this, putting it in the chat right now. So you might want to have a look, and then maybe you can join in with some projects. But for now, I'm going to give the word to Conny. Thanks for joining in here, Conny.
Yeah, hi. Well, thank you for having me. Great opportunity to share the good news we recently had at the Vjosa, and science played quite a big role, so this is the perfect opportunity to talk about it. So yeah, hello, I'm Conny. I work for Riverwatch. I'm just gonna share my screen. So yeah, so Riverwatch is a Vienna-based organization for the protection of rivers, and together with the German Foundation Euronatur, we are the two organizations behind the campaign Save the Blue Heart of Europe, which most of you are already familiar with. So just to quickly tell you about it more. So we're basically fighting for the last free floods in Europe, which are based in the Balkans, and they are threatened by 3,300 dams. So all the red dots you can see on the map here. Within the area, we have local campaign partners. In Albania, it is Eco Albania, and the heart of our campaign is definitely the Vjosa, the queen of European rivers, how we call her. And what is so unique about the Vjosa is that not only the river itself is free-flowing, and it flows from the Greek Pindus mountains all the way through Albania to the Adria, but also most of her tributaries are also intact. Like here, that's the Vjosa. Like here, the Šušica, and that is what's so unique. So we basically have an intact river system that is without part in Europe. The main channel of the Vjosa, 8 dams are planned, and many more on its tributaries. Some of fortunately are already finished, like here on the Langarica, but as I said, most of the tributaries are still free-flowing and providing the Vjosa with lots of sediments. And two of the 8 dams that are protected on the Vjosa are actually in advanced planning phase with concessions already granted, and this is where the focus of our campaign was for the last 7 years. So we actively started to involve scientists in the campaign in 2016 and established a Scientists for Vjosa group, because the Vjosa was scientifically basically a blank page. We didn't know anything about it other than it had all those habitats, like those white gravel floodplains that have become so rare anywhere else in Europe. So we kind of had the idea that, yeah, we thought that it might quite be a biodiversity hotspot. So in June 2016, we brought a delegation of Austrian and German scientists to the Vjosa, and I have to tell you, it was love at first sight. So they basically described the Vjosa as the El Dorado for river ecologists, and immediately recognized the immense value basically on a European scale that the Vjosa provides. And so the Vjosa is basically an open air laboratory, and it is also the last reference river system where we study intact fluvial dynamics or ecosystem services, and use it as a reference for any future projects elsewhere in Europe, because in Western Europe we are restoring rivers, right? And they're still free flowing. This is the last system that doesn't. This is why it is so important from a scientific perspective to preserve the Vjosa. And so together with their colleagues, they wrote a joint memorandum calling on the Albanian government that EIAs should follow EU standards, that a 3-year construction freeze should be put in place in order to carry out a 3-year interdisciplinary research program. And this was then signed by 228 scientists from 33 countries, and then submitted to the Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama, September 2016. So this not only had the effect of letting the Albanian government know of the incredible international importance of this river, but also to inform the science community, drawing their attention to this river jewel that we still have. So at the time, in 2016, the Pocem hydropower project was actually the most imminent threat to the Vjosa. Scientists, so the EIA was at the time submitted, and it was a complete farce. So the scientists took it in their hands to openly criticize it in an open letter to the Prime Minister. And the points they criticized were that flora and fauna were not served whatsoever, and 60% of the EIA text was simply copy-pasted from other EIAs and were not at all site-specific. So hydrological and ecological processes were not evaluated, and potential long-term effects have not been taken into account at all. So on the basis of those shortcomings, as well as deficiencies in the public consultation process of the project, we submitted in the end of 2016 the first environmental lawsuit that was ever filed in Albania, and we won on first instance in the administrative court. But the government has since appealed the decision, and we are still awaiting decision by the appeal court. By the way, this area that you see on the slide right now would have been drowned in the Pocem reservoir. So this campaign is the first example of how the involvement and advocacy of scientists shape the fate of the Vjosa in a positive way. Just before we won that court decision, we held a interdisciplinary research week, kind of to kickstart that 3-year research program that the scientists have demanded in the memorandum. And at the end of this week, the participating scientists held a press conference actually in the middle of the Vjosa on a gravel island. And the idea behind it was kind of to bring media to the river, to have them, you know, experience the river and shape kind of an emotional bond, because you kind of have to be in it to appreciate the beauty. And so yeah, in that press conference, they stressed the importance of preserving this river, and kind of also announced the first findings of the research week. And that was actually quite astonishing, because in just 4 days of research, in just a tiny section of the Vjosa, they found 40 new species that were new to Albania and 2 species completely new to science. So what a biodiversity hotspot, right? So that confirmed our original thought that this is quite a hotspot. And so yeah, I have a little film I want to show you. I hope this works for you. If it doesn't, let me know. But it's just a 3-minute video showing that research week.
The river is wild, it is free. It brings a lot of gravel from transport it down to the sea. It is covered only by the fishing today, something like 16 or 17 species. And probably tomorrow we find more. We find a very, very large amount of very rare aquatic insects. It's a situation which we think we had in Central Europe maybe 150 years ago. If you build a dam, you destroy it.
I love rivers, and that is an amazing system. We spend here about a week, and every day you get closer to the river. You understand the river. You see more, because what you see is in the detail. It's not the thing. It's a fascinating landscape. When you look, it's great. It's wilderness. It's wilderness areas. Whenever you go a meter, it's a different ecosystem in front of you. You step another step, it's a different one. So it's a mosaic. It's a huge mosaic of several puzzles, and that creates a big picture here. The whole river should become a wild river national park. That would be the first one in Europe, and that would create income for the local people, because tourists from all over Europe would come, even from the US, to see a wild river. And this is the only chance in Europe where you can establish such a national park.
First, you have to understand the river, and at the moment it's not understood. If we gain a better understanding, people will say no dam. Yeah.
All right, so that gave you a little insight into the research week, which was quite amazing. And that research week led to the publication of a comprehensive biodiversity study here on the left side, the Akte-Sobot study, in which 60 scientists from Austria and Germany published about the biodiversity and the ecology of the Vjosa in almost 400 pages. And right now, an even more comprehensive biodiversity study, or more in-depth study, is currently being finalized by the University of Natural Resources and Applied Life Sciences in Vienna, or short BOKU. And this is documenting 1,175 species of Vjosa, many of which are protected conventions and directives. Also, we commissioned this sediment study of the Vjosa, and the results were actually quite significant, because the Vjosa carries such a huge amount of sediments, which obviously has quite obvious implications for dam construction. I'll get to that a bit later. So these studies have such important arguments and for the preservation of the Vjosa and against the dams, but the problem is always how to translate these findings into a language that the general public and policymakers in particular can easily grasp. And that, in my experience, is where the kind of weakness of the science community lies, because so often they have such important information but fail to communicate it in a way that is accessible to non-scientists, and so often studies just end up in drawers. So I want to show you some examples of how to visualize data, or like turn it into some visually appealing product that is easier to communicate. So I'm gonna go to the website now. So for example, Gis Data. Gis Data can be portrayed in a interactive map, for example. Here you can this is our hydropower data. You can zoom in, you can mouse over and get like more infos about the rivers or the projects. And then we have all those different layers. It's like all studies we did, all data we collected. For example, here, protected areas. You can click on it and you can have it show only the hydropower plants that are with those protected, or you can check out the hydromorphology. Fish study actually done by Dr. Stephen Weiss, who is with us today, guest of honor. Also, we had a eco master plan done for Balkan rivers that defined no-go zones based on those criteria, and we visualized those criteria also on the map. And for that eco master plan, we did a hand-drawn video that explains the results in 2 minutes. It's kind of an explainer video. I'm not going to show it to you. You can check it out if you're interested. And we also did, well, I know this is a quite elaborate way of portraying a study, but we also did this visually appealing story map. So basically, you just scroll through it, read about it, and you get all the infos about the master plan in that read, and it's quite nicely done. So yeah, obviously, as I said, those are quite elaborate ways. There are easier ways as well to showcase your findings, for example, through infographics. And coming back to the sediment study, here we try to portray how the annual sedition that would be trapped in the Kalivac reservoir, how much that is. And we try to do that by, like, if you put all the sediments in 20 tons trucks, it would form a train of trucks that reaches from Tirana to London. So you can, it's such a huge amount that you can't really grasp it if you don't portray it in a way like that. Or we also try to, we showcase the potential energy loss by sedimentation within 20 years, or the coastal erosion and riverbed decision. or here, this is from the new focus study that we will publish soon, showcasing, so people don't see all that floodplain not as wasteland. This graphic or this picture shows how many different habitat this actually provides, and why this is also why it's such a biodiversity hotspot. Or here one more. That's also from the master plan that shows the species, endangered species that the Balkan rivers host, and what would happen to them if dams are built. So if you read through it, you'll see that it's very easy language that we use for this. So what is so important for making data and scientific findings accessible to abandon the scientific jargon? I know that's hard for scientists, and I think probably often scientists think that can only appear competent if they use scientific language, and you certainly should do that if you communicate with other scientists or in a scientific paper. But in order to, by using all those complicated words, you lose the audience. So you always have to think about your target group, and if your audience is the general public or policymakers, then it's most important to get your message across. So I think that it's necessary to adopt a more pragmatic approach when it comes to communicating findings, to use visuals, make studies visually more appealing by using photos, for example. And I even think that this should be taught in universities, how to translate scientific language that everyone can understand. So, because, yeah, basically in a time like this, the time or the era of being behind the microscope is over, and you have to come forward and you have to make yourself heard as scientists. All right, back to the Vjosa story. So over the time, scientists started to organize themselves independently. They did their own research independent from us, and the group scientists for Vjosa grew and grew. They also sent numerous letters to open letters to the Albanian government, and even though officially nothing much came out of it, it definitely did influence politicians' decisions in the long run. I will get to that shortly. So even though the Buchan case was off the table for the time being, the Vjosa was threatened once again by even bigger Riverwatch dam, and that was planned just upstream of Buchan. So in the following, our fight and the scientists' research focused on that area where the Riverwatch dam was planned. In October 2019, in cooperation with the University of Tirana, we hosted an international wild river science symposium in Tirana, bringing together 120 scientists from all over the world, amongst them the most renowned river ecologists in the world. And so the symposium event was only for scientists, but we complemented it with what we call Wild Rivers Night, with cinema in Tirana. And that was for the general public, and it was a combination of TED Talk-like talks of them, combined with some live music, and also a cocktail to finish the evening with. And so that is another example of how to make science more accessible to the general public. During these events, we also did a series of video statements of participating scientists, in which they warned about the negative consequences the Riverwatch dam would have, and we pushed those on social media. There were also two official outcomes of the symposium. One was a declaration signed by all participants, in which they called upon European institutions, political leaders in the Balkan countries and the Albanian government in particular to protect the remaining rivers in Europe. And then the second outcome was a Vjosa science petition. So that was actually concentrate on the Vjosa only, to stop the dam process on the Vjosa. And that was signed by 776 scientists from 46 countries. It was the biggest science petition we did. And since the government refused to receive the petition, we handed it over to the Albanian president, this guy here in the middle. And that was in February this year, so the Corona pandemic took off. And the president in that meeting underlined his support for the protection of the Vjosa and also for our vision of the national park. Yeah, I haven't even told you about the national park idea. So basically, our alternative vision for the Vjosa is to turn it into Europe's first national park that protects the river on its entire course. First just in Albania, and then we want to extend it to a transboundary national park to protect also the creek stretch of the Vjosa. So the president also promised to host a science conference when we met him to hand over the petition. And that was supposed to happen this April, which was for obvious reason postponed. So it finally happened in a very slimmed down version. So just a kind of roundtable discussion in this September. And that was actually perfect timing, because just before that, the project owners of the Kalivac project submitted the EIA, which was a complete farce. So they basically didn't do any research themselves, but took the data, almost exclusively data that our scientists gathered over the last years, and just came to completely contradictory conclusions. So that obviously didn't sit well with our scientists, and they basically ripped the EIA apart in a 31-page review. And that was also then presented at that roundtable discussion in September, and also at the following press conference on the same day. And it was also submitted to the government, because they didn't really care to participate in that meeting with the president. On the day after the roundtable discussion, we, together with the Albanian president, again here, inaugurated a Vjosa research center, which will serve students and scientists from Albania, but also from abroad, to do research on the Vjosa and her tributaries in the years to come. And fun fact, that research center was named after Professor Fritz Schiemer from the University of Vienna, who kind of was the spider in the web in regards to the scientists for Vjosa group. And he's been organizing most of the studies and the research weeks, and so everyone knew but him that the research center would carry his name, and he had to reveal it with the president on that day, and that was the moment of surprise. By the way, if you're hooked by now and want to do research and use the research center, more than welcome to everyone. Just you can just contact me, and I will put you in touch with the person coordinating it in my email address you can find in the chat. So now on to the grand finale. So those 2 days actually led to the Prime Minister Edi Rama to finally react. And on Twitter, he announced to the media that the environmental minister has actually officially rejected the EIA for Biodiversity, which is huge, and that he also now supports the national park idea. Yeah, that was huge for us. To say there was a lot of Raki that night. Still, we are kind of being cautious with that statement. But what's for sure is that we have one time the environmental permit will definitely not be granted for the time being, at least until elections. And until then, we will promote the national park idea and try to get a political commitment until then. So yeah, so this story, oh yeah, this is the logo for the national park, in which 300 to 350 kilometers of rivers and streams will be protected. So this story is criticism of scientists for Vjosa have influenced not only the public opinion, but also the decision of policymakers. Good research that is communicated in an accessible language goes a long way. So now we are closer to establishing this national park that we have been ever since the campaign. And this could not have happened if it weren't for the scientists to speak up themselves, stand up themselves. Because of course, some of the studies we commissioned, and we as conservationists will always communicate, commission and communicate such studies. But by definition, we are biased and we are seen as biased. So it is actually much, much stronger if scientists stand up themselves and speak for the findings themselves. And that is actually, if there's one thing that you take from this talk, should be at a time where this world, this planet is seeing the biggest ecological crisis ever, precisely because policymakers just don't listen to science. Scientists can no longer be merely providers of data, they actually have to be advocates for their findings. So please stand up, speak out, organize yourself, because otherwise, frankly, and I don't have to tell you, there won't be anything left for you to research. So yeah, well, now the Vjosa has quite a big scientific lobby group. Many other Balkan rivers are still threatened by absurd dam projects and are in the need of all the support they can get. So the idea is to actually create a group, Scientists for Balkan Rivers, in order to kind of spillover effect of the successes we had at the Vjosa for other Balkan rivers as well. So yeah, please stay tuned and join us if you're interested. So that's from my side. Thanks for listening. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now, and we can jump into the
Thank you,
discussion.
Conny. Not only a really cool way of bringing us the story of the Vjosa from where you already said 7 years and 35 minutes. That's not easy. But also a very clear call to action, I would say, to everyone that is in science and that would like maybe want to contribute a bit more, that it's not only about doing more science, but it's also about making sure that that science comes across.
Yeah.
I've got a few questions for that, and then we'll open up to more people that want to ask some questions. And first is especially indeed in this, you mentioned you took the media to the gravel bar to make sure that they really get this emotional bond. To what extent do you feel that those scientists, all those that signed the papers, do really have an emotional bond with rivers, and how important is that in their role as a scientist? Because obviously scientists should be objective, but do you feel that all those signing the paper are actually
you mean those who signed the petition?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Or
it goes both ways, right? The idea of a petition like that is also to get that Vjosa case known within the scientific community. So it goes both ways, having their support, but then also informing them about it. And obviously they don't all have a bond to that river, haven't even been there. Like some of those scientists, they signed a petition, we informed them about it, they signed a petition. But for signing a petition, you have to be been there actually yourself. But for everyone who was at the Vjosa, all the scientists, they definitely there was definitely a bond forged for sure. Everyone who saw the Vjosa for the first time was just completely taken, like being I don't know what to say. It's such an amazing river, and if you grew up in Central Europe, I mean, it's definitely, for me at least as non-scientist, I didn't even know what a wild river looked like before.
So that first moment, how did you get to your first moment? How did you first get involved yourself in this whole story?
I was actually part of the campaign from the very start. I started working just before the campaign started, and was kept on because it started. I was before I started that job, I lived in Canada, in British Columbia, and there was a big debate about privatization of rivers or access to rivers and hydropower as well, and I got involved into that. And so then I got back to Austria, and I got that job, and that fit just perfectly.
Cool. I'm gonna now take it quickly to Stephen, because we've got the privilege of having him here. He's one of the scientists, right?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm quite curious how important it was to you that you, for instance, had Conny backing you up or motivating you to do the science on the Vjosa.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. It's one thing to say, oh, scientists need to do this and do that, but Riverwatch, Conny and Uli have played a very big role in motivating scientists to get more involved and pushing. And of course, there's also sometimes money involved, and this is part of scientific reality. One can't forget that. Certainly people like me, as you know, I do a lot of work for free and use a lot of my spare time to do these issues, but I can't do that 8-10 hours a day. I also have to bring in money and do my research, and I have a job. I don't have to put money in my pocket from these things, but science costs money. And if I'm going to work on an assessment project or doing things for Riverwatch that takes hundreds of hours, well, then I have to pay somebody for it. And so Riverwatch has played a very, very big role in motivating some of these scientists, to be honest. Of course, it's contagious. So if people learn that you're actually doing work for an NGO, it's nice. They get interested, and people have a little bit more empathy for the work you're doing for an NGO, and so people give you things like photos and things like this more often for free. Oh, you're doing much, no problem, we help. So there's that positive side of it, but I guess I'm just trying to say, yeah, Riverwatch has done an exceptional job and an important job in motivating this scientific effort.
Cool. Thanks for your answer. I'm gonna open it up to other questions as well. I see that Nina asked some questions. Maybe you can ask them yourself.
First of all, thank you for a very informative and inspiring presentation. I myself work in an NGO, and it really comes to my mind that I really like all the visuals that you do, and it really is really impactful, I think. didn't quite get is an environmental assessment for the Vjosa River. Has it been done, or was it just planned to be done? And if it is, does it exist in English language or
so
only
for
in
every dam project, they have the project owners have to do an environmental assessment. So that's the law also in Albania. So it was done by, they usually assign companies to do it, or research groups to do it. But in that case, like especially for the first case, the Buchem case, there was no data on the Vjosa, and they were supposed to deliver that themselves, but they didn't. They just used data from different geographical regions, which makes no sense, obviously. And then so we realized that there's no data on the Vjosa, and that's why we commissioned all those studies and tried to get the scientists involved, because that is like every scientist, correct me if I'm wrong, but every scientist dream of discovering a new species, and that's still possible at the Vjosa. So it drew in a lot of people from the science community. So we did all that data, and for the second environmental impact assessment for the Riverwatch project, they again didn't do any research themselves. They just used what was there, and then just came to a contradictory conclusion, which was no problem at all. Like, yes, there are protected species, but we do just some mitigation measures which were not even specified in the documents, and it will be no problem. That was basically what the EIA found, and that's why our scientists, who were the owners actually of the data that they used, they wrote a review on that and criticized it publicly.
I'm not taking too much time. I have two little questions. Okay. You mentioned the scientists for Balkan rivers. Can you say more about that? Is it something that just started, or how can we contribute, be a part, and so on?
That's a good question, and that's actually not something that we have developed so far. We just trying to get like a scientific lobby group who speaks out for more than just the Vjosa, and it can be a few, there might be some scientists from the Balkans here today that they're willing to speak out publicly. For example, like we could do those video statements again, where scientists speak up for different rivers, whatever their competencies lie. But yes, it's definitely something that we still have to develop. But if people are interested, then I would like to start a list of scientists who would like to join, and you can just email me. My email is in the chat.
And my final question: I saw interactive maps on the website of Urch. Is there a tool that you use, or do you hire an IT expert to do this, or is there a tool that is like user friendly for?
Yes, no, this was done by website designers. They are specialized in that kind of program. If there's some kind of easy to use way to do that, Google might offer something like that, but I'm not qualified to say more about that.
Thank you so much.
But I can get you the contact info, of course, of our.
No, I was just wondering for some more like basic level, us regular people.
I think pretty much you have to become good at GIS stuff. So ArcGIS, QGIS, it's quite fun.
I'm just getting started with QGIS, but the interactive stuff, that's like a new planet for me.
You'll get there. Opening layers, boom, boom. I wouldn't be able to do a map like that, but it's cool to be able to.
Thank you so much.
I see a question coming in, but I have a real quick question in between, because you mentioned there's a group of interdisciplinary research. How wide do you go with interdisciplinary?
Yeah, well, we even have social sciences involved, but so yeah, all kinds of like scientists from different fields so far, like not just aquatic but also terrestrial, biodiversity, for example, then hydropower of rivers, sediments, like all the different yeah, disciplines.
Leonie, do you want to ask the question yourself, or should I? Leonie is saying, in consideration of the EIA procedures, who is supposed to make a decision based on EIA? So who did the scientists have to convince that the EIA was bad?
The Minister of Environment, who then decided that. So that is, by the way, that a project is stopped because of the EIA. That is extremely rare. Like, usually EIAs are just done because they have to be done, but that a project is actually stopped. We were taken by complete surprise. We didn't expect it at all.
Right.
So yeah, and that was definitely the scientists' work that the EIA was rejected.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. How sure are you that indeed there won't be any dam now? It's not going to happen, or do you feel like it might just only boom, turn around again?
Yeah, can't forget that the Balkans. Yeah, we are being very cautious with it because there's also upcoming elections in Albania, and there is some kind of political power play between the president and the prime minister, and so we are being very careful with our festivities because we don't know. After the election, it could be on the table again, to be honest. So that's why we are trying to get the political commitment for a national park right before the election.
We've been quite focusing, obviously, because that was the theme of this chat, on the scientists around Vjosa. To what extent do you feel it was important to have the local community standing behind you, and are they supportive of a national park, or how do you?
Yes, actually the local community has been on our side from the very start. The one village of Kut, which would have been affected by the Puchem Dam, were actually plaintiffs in our lawsuit as well, and they have hosted the scientists from the research week in their homes, and so there's even a connection now between the scientists and the locals. And yeah, it is important to have the locals on your side, obviously, but they all are, and they're all in favor of the national park, and they know that they can actually benefit much more, and Albania as a society as well, from the national park, because that's kind of that's they have a huge comparative advantage because there's nothing left in Europe like that, and if they turn it into a national park, they could profit so much more from ecotourism than from a stupid dam that destroyed the river for good. So they understand that, and even the Industrial Confederation of Albania is supporting the national park. So even they are on our side.
Right.
Yeah, we don't know what their hidden is, but they also think that a sustainable development of the region is much more profitable even than the dam.
Is Dimi at all involved in this as well? Is it going to be a national World Rivers Park, or is there the potential for an?
Well, there is already an effort. I think it happened 2 years ago. They kind of formed an eco museum between Albania and Greece. There is a called Medina, and they collaborated with Albania and some smaller NGOs and communities, and they established this it's not something really official. It was just an initiative, the Eco Museum of Vjosa. And I have a question. First of all, thanks for the great presentation. It was a really nice overview of what has been achieved so far. My question, or maybe your opinion on something, as a campaign, did you think of communicating the scientific data and results on the site that they were collected? Make them available to visitors or tourists that are walking or visiting the river? And would this be something equally useful as communicating the data through the media?
Yeah, yeah, we've thought about that, but the thing is, there's no tourism yet. There's just no tourism. But that's kind of also along the lines why we also have a research center, and to be with the science closer to the river and to the people there. But online, especially in times like these, you just reach much more people than on the ground. And also, you know, you can put signs up, but you know, you don't want to disturb the beautiful view of the Vjosa, to be honest. So if you're there, you should just experience it and
the river as it is. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
People, is there any more questions? There's quite some people here. Kara, go ahead.
Hi, Connie. Yeah, I have a question. If any locals are negatively impacted from the plans of the national park, like in terms of forest relocation or residential land use changes, or if the plans for national park already have established those perimeters on whether that includes removing people or not.
Yeah, so the ICN is actually with us on that. They are currently designing a roadmap and the zoning for the national park. That takes up years, right? There's not something, because we don't want to have just a paper park. There's enough paper parks. We want an actual park. So I can't tell you much about this. I don't think there will be much relocation. The people actually live with the river, and so the communities with it. Yeah, I'm not an expert on that, on the zoning and what is allowed in which zone, but the people there live actually in harmony with the river. So I don't think there will have to be much dislocation of people. But yeah, I'm not the expert on that. I'm sorry, I can't elaborate on that too much.
No,
Cool
that's
question
fine.
towards the end, though, as it really shows like it's a cool moment that probably this river is safe, but still quite some work to do.
Yes, definitely. It takes years to establish national park like
obviously now we're coming towards the end, and now there's questions. David and then Yuri, and then maybe a last question, but it's kind of towards the end. David, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Conny, for the very nice journey on the Vjosa you've given us tonight. One thing you were mentioning a lot was Vjosa National Park. It's something that's starting to become more and more like a possibility. But I was wondering, what are the next steps? Is this something where scientists